So, the woman who needs to personally sign off on every purchase over $100,000, blocking over 1,000 disaster aid contracts, and leaving hurricane survivors without homes for 2 winters, somehow managed to find the time to personally approve $300 million in luxury private jets for her own travel, including one she's trying to rename and sell to us as a deportation plane, despite it having a queen bed, a bar, and, I'm not making this up, interior design by a famous New York designer. They call this fiscal accountability. The rest of us call it spending like a real housewife while rural North Carolinians pay mortgages on rubble. And as of today, Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that she is out as DHS Secretary. He's replacing her with Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin, effective March 31st. Trump said she has served us well, which is the kind of thing you say when you're too embarrassed to say anything else. According to NBC News, Trump was furious about her performance during this week's congressional hearings. The exact hearings you're about to watch, so keep that in mind. What you're about to see is the testimony that ended her. What we're about to watch is a House Judiciary Committee hearing from this week, where she sits across from Representative Deborah Ross of North Carolina, a state that has received just $7 billion of the $59.6 billion in damages caused by Hurricane Helene, a storm that killed more than 100 people almost a year and a half ago. Ross has done her homework. She is not here to play. And what happens when she tries to pull the classic, "this is Biden's fault" dodge in the middle of a direct question about disaster bottlenecks and luxury jets is something. Let's watch Ms. Private Jet Setter in this hearing, and I will give you my take later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, Hurricane Helene tore through western North Carolina almost a year and a half ago, killing more than 100 people and causing more than $60 billion of damage. 2 months later, Congress passed a bipartisan disaster package, which included $29 billion for FEMA Disaster Relief Fund covering several states. And yet, despite this, countless North Carolinians have spent 2 winters paying mortgages and taxes on homes that are unlivable and may not even exist anymore. They have been waiting in limbo for your department to sign off on recovery funding. And I know Representative Kiley raised similar issues in his state. North Carolina's counties have had to step up to fill in the gap, spending their limited taxpayer funds on recovery and repair, with the expectation that they would swiftly be reimbursed by the federal government. And yet, many of these counties have not been reimbursed until this week, but we'll get to that. Meaning that they have had to use all their money and not have money for their essential services, public schools, EMS, other public services, healthcare, and everything else. And I have met with some of the county executives who have struggled with their budgets while recovering from Helene. These delays in paying out this desperately needed recovery funds are simply unacceptable. And you heard that from my Republican senator, Senator Tillis, yesterday. Your new policy, and it is a new policy, requiring your personal sign-off on expenditures over $100,000 has contributed to many of these delays, creating a bottleneck, blocking reimbursement for hundreds of millions of dollars of disaster funding that stand directly between North Carolinians and that relief. In fact, Senator Tillis, as I'm sure you remember, lambasted you and the failure of your department in dispersing these funds. And then magically, about $80 million got released today, for which we're thankful. But we shouldn't have to have a U.S. senator or a representative or another representative come to you directly to get you to do your job. But we also know that you had time to sign off on the purchase of 2 luxury private Gulfstream jets for your personal travel, $170 million. And we've heard about the new Boeing 737 that you're in the process of outfitting. Evidently, you were satisfied that there was no fraud, waste, and abuse involved in the jets. But meanwhile, could you tell me whether you found any fraud, waste, or abuse in these North Carolina expenditures?
You know, Congresswoman, what I would tell you is that Joe Biden failed North Carolina.
Listen to me. I asked you a direct question. Joe Biden provided greater relief. Joe Biden showed up.
No, he
Joe
didn't.
Biden didn't lie about what was going on the ground. I don't even want to get into what Donald Trump did during the campaign,
President
the
Trump
misinformation that was put out there. And you cannot find the time until my senator berates you in public to approve this money. Individual members of Congress should not have to come to you. Our counties, our struggling counties in the western part of the state, are some of the most rural counties. They are poor counties. They do not have the money to front for you.
In the months that we have been here, we have deployed billions of dollars, billions more than what the Biden
I am reclaiming my time. You have been too slow. I have heard this from Republican county commissioners. I have heard this from administrators. I have been in the western part of the state. I know exactly what's going on, and you have turned a blind eye while you're busy trying to deport American citizens. And now I want to get back, reclaiming my time, to the second point that Senator Tillis made. You have not responded to him and the people of North Carolina about why you have picked up U.S. citizens. You've heard that from Representative Correa. Why you have intimidated people who are here lawfully, and why you are threatening the economy of one of the most prosperous states in this country by practicing malpractice. You should resign or be impeached. I yield back.
Chairman, may I answer that question? The state of North Carolina has received billions more in Helene relief disaster assistance than President Biden did. In fact, every single
because we appropriated the money.
Every project has been
yielded back.
Obligated. It's been paid out. The state manages the response, and those counties get their funding from the state, which has been allocated the FEMA dollars.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
If you're feeling something right now, a kind of righteous, jaw on the floor fury, you're not wrong to feel it. And I want to give you some receipts to back it up, because what Representative Ross was describing is actually far worse than it looked in that hearing room. Here's the policy at the center of this. Her $100,000 sign-off rule, requiring her personal approval for any FEMA expenditure over that amount, has delayed approval or left approval pending for 1,034 contracts, grants, or disaster assistance awards, according to a Senate Democratic report based on an internal DHS tracker provided by whistleblowers. Over 1,000. That's not a bottleneck. That's a dam. And here's the legal problem, which Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican, spelled out in extraordinary terms the day before this hearing. Tillis accused her of violating the Homeland Security Act of 2002, which expressly prohibits the Secretary of Homeland Security from restricting or diverting FEMA resources from the agency's mission, saying, "I have reason to believe that you're violating the law, either knowingly or unknowingly." That's a Republican senator from North Carolina accusing her of breaking federal law, not a talking point, an accusation based on actual federal law. Now, her defense, and she has one, is that the policy was designed to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. Fine. Except FEMA's own employees wrote a dissent letter saying the policy reduces FEMA's authorities and capabilities to swiftly deliver our mission. When your own agency is issuing internal dissent letters about your signature policy, accountability stops being the right word for what you're doing. And then there's the ProPublica investigation from last year, which I want you to know about because it is the key to understanding how this policy actually operates in practice. ProPublica found that while FEMA aid was stalled across the country, a Florida city managed to unlock expedited funding, not through official channels, but by asking one of her campaign donors to text her directly. Within 24 hours, the donor told the mayor to expect a call from her FEMA fixer, and by the next week, FEMA was intending to expedite the funding. So the policy isn't slowing down everyone equally. It's a VIP lane. You know somebody who knows Kristi? Your money moves. You're a poor, rural county in western North Carolina with no connections, 2 winters in a broken house. And then there's the jets. According to Axios, she purchased 2 Gulfstream G700 luxury jets in October. A third Boeing 737, nicknamed the Big Beautiful Jet, is being leased with plans to buy it for about $70 million, bringing the total jet spend to nearly $300 million. The money for the Gulfstreams was supposed to cover maritime border security and Coast Guard planes. A senior Trump administration official called the jet spending the world's worst deal to buy an aircraft and an abuse of federal money. When the people inside Trump's own administration are calling it an abuse, that should tell you something. And remember, because of her own policy, she personally approved every dollar of that $300 million without any of the scrutiny she's applying to a county EMS reimbursement in Yancey County. Give this language to anyone who asks. She created a bureaucratic chokehold on disaster relief for poor communities, a chokehold that may be illegal while personally fast-tracking a fleet of luxury jets using money Congress appropriated for border. That is the sentence. That is what happened. So what does this actually mean for people? On the personal level, North Carolina has received about $7 billion of the $59.6 billion in damages from Hurricane Helene. The state's FEMA reserves are now dangerously low, and the disaster relief fund can't be replenished because DHS is in a shutdown. The people waiting on reimbursements aren't bureaucracies. They're county governments that had to drain their budgets to cover emergency services, school funding, EMS, and infrastructure repair on the promise that the federal government would pay them back. Imagine your insurance company saying, "We'll cover your flooded house, just front us the $800,000 first and wait 18 months. The Texas floods this past summer made this even starker. Search and rescue teams were delayed during floods that killed 120 people because routine urgent expenditures required her personal review. Call centers went understaffed. Contracts went unsigned. The chief of FEMA's urban search and rescue unit resigned in frustration." On the institutional level, this is what happens when you centralize power for its own sake, and then fill the empty space with a system that rewards people who know the right people. FEMA was specifically designed, after Katrina, to be able to move fast without a single political bottleneck. Cameron Hamilton, the interim FEMA leader, was fired one day after testifying to Congress that he did not believe eliminating FEMA was in the best interest of the American people. The people who understand the mission are being removed. The people who understand the donor list are staying. And for what? What is this actually accomplishing? She says it's about stopping fraud, waste, and abuse. But a DHS spokesperson's own response to the Senate report was that there are no systemic delays, which is a strange thing to say when over 1,000 contracts are documented as pending. The real answer is probably simpler and worse. This is about control. Control over who gets money, when, and why. That's not a FEMA policy. That's a protection racket with a press release. And it's coming from the woman who, as governor of South Dakota, spent $68,000 renovating the governor's residence, adding luxury rugs, chandeliers, and a sauna. Different budget, same instincts. But it's worth noting that Senators Murray and Peters, not exactly the type to make a lot of noise, wrote a formal letter to her demanding she revoke the $100,000 policy after the Texas floods. Their letter put it as plainly as anyone has. In the context of large-scale disaster response, where millions of dollars are often mobilized within hours, requiring secretary-level approval for expenses of this size is not oversight, but obstruction. Not oversight, obstruction. That's bipartisan legal analysis, not Democratic talking points. As of this week, North Carolina received $92 million in Helene reimbursements, but only after 2 Republican senators publicly humiliated her on the Senate floor and a House member pushed her at this very hearing. Over a year after Helene, North Carolina has received approximately $7 billion of the $59.6 billion in damages the storm caused. The money is moving now only because political embarrassment finally made a signature cheaper than a scandal. And today, that same political embarrassment cost her the job entirely. According to NBC News, Trump was specifically incensed by her testimony this week, the testimony you just watched. She stonewalled Congress, deflected every question onto Biden, and tried to take credit for money that Congress itself appropriated. And it turns out even Donald Trump has a limit, which, honestly, is a sentence I did not expect to be writing today. Trump announced she is being shipped off to a new role called Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, which, and I say this with complete sincerity, is the most made-up sounding title I have ever heard in my life. It is the political equivalent of being told, "You're not fired, you're being promoted to chief of the break room." This isn't really about jets, though the jets are genuinely obscene. And it's not really about one incompetent cabinet secretary. It's about what happens when you design a system that only rewards you if you know the right person, have the right donor, or generate enough headlines to embarrass someone into action. FEMA exists because America made a promise after Katrina that geography and poverty and political inconvenience would never again determine whether you get help after a disaster. She has quietly been dismantling that promise with a policy she calls accountability and a checkbook she calls the Coast Guard. The saddest part isn't the jets. It's that the money started flowing this week, not because a policy changed, not because she had a change of heart, but because it finally became more politically embarrassing to do nothing than to keep holding the money hostage. That's not government. That's a vending machine that only works when you shake it hard enough. And at $300 million a fleet, at least Kristi can afford the ride home when someone finally unplugs it. Turns out today, someone did. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to like the video and drop a comment with your thoughts. Share this video with someone who needs to see what's going on. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss future updates and deep dives like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.